Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone, in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. And one thing I look forward to when it comes to this story is that whenever I do finish this entire novel, being able to try to look up and watch the anime and even read the manga of it. Now, of course, I haven't quite seen all the manga there is to Higurashi, not by a mile, in fact. I don't really like trusting most manga websites. Prefer to actually just have the physical manga in front of me or watch a YouTube video of it. But I have seen a little bit here and there, and a little bit of the anime here and there. But I'm not sure if there are full episodes of the anime on YouTube. And even then, I'm also trying to avoid spoiling myself on the story. That being said, what I find interesting, there's a lot of anime out there that sometimes it starts as an anime and then later it gets adapted into a novel and manga. Some, like Dragon Ball Z, started as a manga and then later got adapted into an anime. And of course, this thing initially started as this novel here on Steam, though apparently there are many different versions of this game, including ones that have more sound, perhaps voice acting, and even a lot more pictures, including many of the more violent pictures. Though I imagine if I ever see that, I'll have to watch somebody else's Let's Play of it, which, again, looking forward to that as well. But again, trying to hold off on that until I've finished it myself. That way I can more properly enjoy just sitting back and watching someone else's reactions to things. Otherwise, if I just start watching someone else do a Let's Play of this game, I'll be too engrossed, enraptured, immersed, and I'll be enjoying it too much, watching and listening to them do the game. I'll be like, what, no, do it more of that? And so I want to at least try to finish this before I start watching other people play through the whole game, or read mangas of it, or watch the anime of it. Though I might want to try to, after making this video, at least try to go and watch the anime, at least as far as I am in the story. That way I'm more... Like, there's sometimes people are laughing in certain ways, and I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce that. Not that I'll be able to pronounce it even after hearing it. But part of me is like, it'd be nice to just keep up with it on that, and maybe just find some mangas of it here and there. And I will say this. I find the story versions of Higurashi, as well as the manga and the anime version, very interesting. And that's, again, this thing started as, heck, Reincarnated as a Slime and Overlord started as novels. Heck, even there's a Slayers. It's a story of a character called Lena Inverse and Zealous Metalium and Guri Gabriev and such. Started off as novels. And some of those novels got adapted into anime. And then later they got adapted into manga because people wanted to read manga versions of them. So I just think it's interesting to have different media versions of the different stories. Because after all, anime is just a form of media. Same as manga, same as books. Heck, I made a video once called Happy, It's Jolly, It's Good, where I mentioned that saying you like anime it's a lot like saying you like movies. They're both just forms of media. But anime has many, many different genres, as do movies. There's like same with video games. Video games just a form of media, but there's many video games that are about very different subjects and very different play styles and meant for very different audiences. And, you know, some have more replayability, but I guess it just depends on how much enjoyment and what you can find that you can do in it. Because as long as you're still enjoying the game, I guess you can keep playing it over and over. And there are sometimes if you play a game, it's like, okay, you don't want to come back to it, but then you come back to an older game and you haven't played it a long time, and it's really fun to get back into. Just saying, like, take this. I enjoy the music and the art and the story and the characters in this novel. But I also like the little bits I've seen of the manga and the tiny clips I've seen of the anime. I enjoy that too. It's kind of like Dragon Ball Z. Though I can't say I don't think I can remember ever reading a novel version of Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I'm sure it can be done well. I guess it just depends on the skill of the writer. But I don't know if there's any, you know, true to the story novelizations of Dragon Ball Z. No idea. But I'm just saying, like, and of course there are some times that with different adaptations, you get some changes. Like Berserker Gluttony, I remember reading the novels at one point and saying they needed to have an anime of it, and of course they have made an anime of it, and they've even made manga versions of it. Or there are some things like Full Metal Alchemist, which actually has 2 anime versions. Basically what's happening is it started off as a manga, and they made an anime based on it, but then the anime far outpaced the manga, and so they wanted to finish the story, so they came up with what they thought would be a good path for the story to finish off the anime. However, it took like another decade plus for the manga to finish, at which point the story had become very different from what was in the anime, so they made a new anime to cover what actually happened in the later parts of the manga. Now, in the end, they became different stories, and some of the different characters actually had different roles in the story. But I enjoy both versions of the anime, and the manga's good. I, again, don't remember if there's ever a novelization of either form of it. And of course, sometimes you have adaptations. Heck, sometimes you have live action adaptations of anime, and most of the times that doesn't turn out the best. It's usually a bit disappointing to most people. It's less common to find a live action adaptation that people like. Though that being said, I really do like people cosplaying lots of different anime characters. I think that's pretty awesome. And, well, I also like video games, because that's usually a different type of adaptation. Heck, technically there's an Overlord video game. Not the one with the goblin minions for like the Xbox. I mean the one actually based on the novel and the anime Overlord of Ainzel Gone, which is actually considered part of... Now, I've been hearing for quite a few years that the writer of the Overlord novel was going to end at volume 18. Though apparently now there's some rumors saying that, you know, he was initially thinking of going to volume 30 in the long run, but decided against it because someone was saying something about upset about some issue of a translation or something. But I really doubt that, but I really have no way of knowing. It's just a bunch of fucking like Reddit rumors and shit, so you have to take it all grain with salt, you know. But at least my take on the matter is I don't think that's true. I think it was always going to end with volume 18. Because at the end of the day is this. If he was going to be going to volume 30, unless he would suddenly set speed records with that shit, it would have taken maybe a couple more decades. Then again, I mean, to each their own on that, because when it comes right down to it, the author of Berserk, when he passed, you know, according to what he had said and left on notes on stuff, is that he was only a third of the way how far he wanted to go through the manga. And granted, it's a great story and it's a lot of detail and a lot of detail in the story and a lot of detail in the pictures. Like, there's certainly a lot of hard work goes into it. It certainly requires a lot of time to draw the stuff as detailed as he does and as good as he does. But at the same time, to only be a third of the way through, I'm like, I don't think that story would ever get finished. You'd have to live to be 100. So, that being said, how will the story of Berserk end? I don't know. And of course, there's different things. Like, on the one hand, CGI and AI can help make it easier to make a manga or something into an anime. But at the same time, it's people care the most about what kind of quality you get. And some games and some anime, if you change certain things or do some CGI, either people will feel that it's not true to the character of the story that they're used to. They'll feel like the characters they grew to love were betrayed. Or they'll feel that the quality suffered. For example, there's an anime called X-Arm, which is really, really awful. It's an awful anime. There's points where some of the characters are 2D and 3D in the same scene. And there's times where it's just like, it's really bad. And of course, there's like, you can see many animes from like the 70s where everything is completely hand-drawn. And obviously that takes a lot of time and effort. But it looks really awesome. But at the end of the day, I guess the main thing I care about is, do I enjoy, what I'm watching? I mean, at the end of the day, I really don't... I won't turn my nose up if something's made entirely by AI. But at the end of the days, I do value someone doing everything by hand and human voices and all of that. And the people actually doing, after all, a lot of animes even before AI were going just a lot of CGI. AI is just the next step. At the end of the day, the main thing I care about is what kind of quality do I get? But at the end of the day, whatever the, obviously using some of that stuff can cut the costs and time it takes to make an anime. But at the same time, I do, have a preference. I do like it if someone's going to draw out a manga panel by panel with their own hands. I do like it if they're going to draw something with their own hands. If they're going to animate it with their own hands. And they're going to voice it themselves and all that. Or have actual people voice it. That's good. But then the day is this. I'll just enjoy what it is, and whatever it is, I'll enjoy it. But, obviously, I would enjoy the actual hand-drawn stuff more, but I do understand that takes more time, and it's more expensive, and it certainly requires a lot more skill and patience, both on the part, especially patience on their part to make it, but also patience on my part, the fact that it's going to be forever see a next episode or anything. So on the one hand, AI, it's like a trade-off. Like, okay, you can have more anime and it's done faster, but you may lose some aspects of quality. Though AI is getting better and better, to the point that AI can do things better than most humans. But at the same time, to a degree, I think it'd be nice to have even a lesser quality in terms of, if the drawing has a few errors here and there, I'd rather have a few errors from a human making, human errors than having everything be perfect by an AI. But then the day, whichever one people decide to use it, that's fine. That's their choice. They're the ones with the, creativity, and they're the ones creating the story and creating the anime and the video game. Though I do worry that as the AI and stuff, grows, will we have less humans that are capable of that level of skill? Certainly I don't have the skill level to draw, anime and stuff and manga to the professional level that a lot of people do. But of course, because in an era before CGI and AI, everyone had to do it by hand, and they had to work really hard to do that. And of course, you'd have a push for more people with talent, and those people with talent would work really hard. Of course, that'd be a bit of a burden on them, but of course, it would be part of the reason why they developed to be such amazing artists. But in modern times, I think it's not an issue of ethics about like, oh, whether or not you should use AI or replacing jobs. It's the fact that if AI can do all this stuff, then there's less push for humans who have the talent to do it, less reward for them, and also less people trying to develop the skill, especially even the people with the talent, unless they just absolutely have a passion for it. But it's just, AI can definitely streamline a lot of things. A lot of times it's just rehashing a lot of the designs and styles of other artists. But at the same time, and like I said, a lot of times, anytime someone starts a new style or something, like they start doing an anime manga of their own, they'll have their own little quirks about how they draw it, and it's going to be, probably a lot of people might see it as a little odd. It might not get after all, a lot of people don't exactly get. Heck, there was a lot of painters in the past who are considered world famous nowadays, but that didn't happen until like long after their deaths. But I don't know. I guess the main thing it's like kind of like there's the two different art styles of this. I prefer the anime style because you have the new images and old images that are available in this game. And I'll say this: I prefer the newer style, the anime-esque style. But I really do appreciate that I can switch back and forth to see both styles. And even though, yes, I prefer the newer style, I still really do have an appreciation for the older style as well. And I like that the older style exists, and I think it's, in its own right, is really good. And I like having both. So, I guess that's the main thing I'm just saying, is like, I just find it interesting to be able to see multiple media versions of the same story. Though sometimes you lose some certain things, like Overlord, when it got adapted into anime, of course you have to cut out a lot of things. It's like if you adapt a book into a movie. A lot of times you have to cut a lot of the book out, just because if you were to, set to film everything that happens inside a book, it'd probably be like a 40-hour movie. In addition to that, there's some things that work well in certain medias than others. Same way there's certain things that work good in some genres than others. Main point being is that there are some things that are entertaining to see in a movie, but are not entertaining in a novel. There are some things that are entertaining and good for pacing in a novel, but don't work quite right in a movie. And a lot of times you lose a lot of stuff that was originally in the book. Though also you also get a lot of times where you get additional things added in to a movie that were not initially in the book. Sometimes it could even be a retcon. Now, usually these things are usually canon. Though it is possible you might have a lot of things that are added in that are not really canon. They're just filler stuff. I mean, Naruto was pretty well known for having a lot of episodes that were just, that if you didn't watch them, it wouldn't affect the story at all. It's just slice of life type stuff. You just wanted to have a little more adventure time with your, shinobi buddies. Bleach even had a little bit of filler as well. I don't know. A lot of people seem to dislike the Bounto arc, but actually I liked it. I liked the Bounto arc. I mean, the filler arcs were good. It's just, I think a lot of times that people really get pissed off about the filler arcs is that there's always the debate of, is it canon? And even then, is the whole time you're waiting on the filler, watching the filler arcs, you're like, well, I've been waiting on the main story. When's the main story going to finish? So a lot of times it's people being impatient. Like, okay, it's great that we're getting this extra content of this thing called a Bount arc and these new fights, but it's like I'm just like really looking forward to this other arc. So But like I said, I do like stuff like Reincarnated as a Slime, Overlord. Heck, still want to see a return of certain games. Like the two best games of the original PlayStation were Brave Fencer Musashi and Mega Man Legends. I still want a Mega Man Legends 3. And technically, I still want a Brave Fencer Musashi 3. I mean, technically, Samurai Legend Musashi was technically Brave Fencer Musashi 2. But it was okay. It was made for the PS2. It was okay in its own right. But it was complete garbage compared to the first game. And it wasn't a sequel. It was like a reimagining. It's like the first game you had beautiful brushstroke artwork. You had voice actors from the Dot Hack video games. Like, you remember the anime Dot Hack sign? Great anime. And then you have just orchestral music, and it's a pretty good game. It was like Legend of Zelda, but better. And then you had Samurai Legend Musashi, which you had horrible voice acting, surf guitar, and you had thick cel-shaded manga. And in the first game, you were saving the all-you-can-eat kingdom from the Thirst Quencher Empire. And in the second game, you were saving a bunch of hippies riding a space whale from an evil corporation. So, but they both had, and they had different mechanics, a different way of playing, but they were both enjoyable. But I like the first one more. And granted, you can tell both of them wanted more content. Especially in the first one. You could tell there was lots of areas where they wanted to add more. And there's things where there were supposed to be extra things. Like they're talking about the chili at the restaurant. And you never got that. And a lot of it came down to, one, you could tell some of the things they were wanting to push their genre and their age rating. And you can tell there were certain things that basically had to get cut due to like not exactly censorship, because it wasn't being censored. It was more so, because censorship would be like they made the thing and it got edited when it got sent to another country. Who knows? Maybe that happened. I didn't know about it. But it was more like they were making a certain way. You can tell they were wanting to push the genre into a few other spots. They were wanting to genre in terms of the game style and in terms of the story, as well as in terms of the maturity. But of course, at times you could tell they wanted to push a little further on that, and they had to sort of rein themselves in. But I think the main part of it was like with Crash Bandicoot. It's the same story as with Spyro the Dragon, a lot of PlayStation games. Like the original Crash Bandicoot games, when they first were released, especially, they were very worried about the first one. But with all of them, they had to worry about it. The developers of the Crash Bandicoot games were worried that it was going to catch the PlayStations on fire. Because technically they had to push the limitations of not only what the console can handle, but also of how much data could actually be on the disc. But that's nothing new. I mean, programmers all the time in the past had to push certain limitations with every generation. I mean, if you look at games like Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic Spinball, 3D Blast and stuff like that, the way, the Flicky Island or Sonic 3D, it's like some of those things on the Sega Genesis or on Nintendo, like on the cartridges or the CDs, they really had to push things a little bit. You had to deal with the limitations of the console and limitations of what the disc could do. And of course, keep in mind, we also had memory cards back then. So, I could tell like there were some things they wanted to include that it was just an issue of the disc couldn't hold any more data. The one interesting thing is, Brave Fencer Musashi came with 2 discs. One was the game disc for Brave Fencer Musashi. The other was a demo disc of Final Fantasy VIII, where you actually had Rinoa at the Dole Kingdom, when normally you wouldn't have met her yet, and a few other changes. I thought it was really good. I liked it. I remember playing that demo quite a bit. Okay, if I remember right, Spyro the Dragon had a little demo of Crash, and I remember Crash Bandicoot 2 had a demo of Spyro the Dragon. I remember so many times trying to, glitch things and break out of that demo. And I'll say this, I do have, both on the PlayStation and on the computer, no, it didn't run worth a shit on this computer, the Reignited trilogy. And I'll say this, it is beautiful the way they remastered it. It looks incredible. But I still have a preference for the original graphics. Not only do they look much more ambient, really, it's kind of like the idea of that you can usually find a little more ambience and even a little bit more scariness and horror in the old Silent Hill and Resident Evil games. A lot of the polygonal styles of the older games feel a little bit more, I don't know, dreamlike, if you know what I mean. More, though I will tell you this, like two of the best games for the PS2 were like Dragon Quest VIII and Shining Force EXA. And of course I really like Star Ocean Till End of Time, Grandia 3, Wild Arms 3. You know, lots of PS2 games are great. Heck, Soul Calibur 2 is a great game. Heck, Ivy in that, you know, very, very sexy. You know, she had giant tits. She actually looks... Ivy from Soul Calibur 2 looks very much like Kairi Ushiromiya in this game. Also, they do kind of remind me of Kaoru Nagisa from Evangelion. But I will tell you this, and that's another thing that reminds me of, though. While I say Shining Force EXA and Dragon Quest, 8 are like the best games to the PS2, I will say that one of the most immersive ones was Dot Hack Infection. Again, I really like Dot Hack Psy in the anime, and Dot Hack Infection, the games came in 4 installments. I never did get the last of the installments just because it never was available for sale anywhere near me. But each one would come with 2 discs. One was a game disc, and the other was an anime, like an OVA, an original video animation. Heck, I have I've shown them in live streams for of ours. I have the first, 4 OVAs of Tenchi Muyo on discs. Heck, I remember being younger and finding Ryoko, Washu, and Mihoshi to be very, very beautiful. I would also say Kione from Tenchi Universe. But I'm hesitant to say that just because I was wanting to keep this list to just the Tenchi Muyo characters. Because technically you have Tenchi Muyo with the OVAs, then you have Tenchi Universe, Tenchi Tokyo, multiple Tenchi movies. Then you have Tenchi Ryo Oki, which is a continuation of the Tenchi Muyo, which, great story by the way. And then you also have, you have Tenchi Muyo GXP, which is technically a continuation of the main story, but it's Tenchi's cousin, Sena. And then, of course, there's some offshoots of that. And then there's War in Geminar, and then there's Tenchi AI Love. Though I would say the genre definitely changes a bit here and there. Like, the main character gets less superpowers, and also it seems like people are more of a dick to the main character. So... But I will say this, all of them have quite a few very beautiful people. Very, very attractive women. But I would say, again, Ryoko, Washu, Mihoshi, just very, very sexy. And again, there's several beautiful women in Soul Calibur 2, but again, Ivy. Now, granted, I would say don't exactly like the whole metal and stuff. But I do think Ivy from Soul Calibur 2 looks very much like Kairi Ushiromiya from this game, which you will probably not see in this video because not only we've been talking for a long time, but also I don't know if we'll get far enough in this video in the story to see anyone else, since we're in a air quotes flashback at the moment. So, but yeah, I guess the main thing we're saying is that, I like seeing the different adaptations of things, but of course sometimes things can be disappointing, like Gantz. If anyone out there has read all of the manga of Gantz, well, you certainly would feel that the anime adaptation of it is very disappointing. I mean, it's good to see some of it in animated form, but of course I can understand why they couldn't continue it. One, I understand the anime version of it wasn't very popular, even when they gave the pseudo ending of it. 2, the manga is unbelievably long. And 3 is that it just kept getting increasingly violent and gory. And, well, at that point, it's like, hey, do you want to have Mortal Kombat the anime? And I guess it might have been more difficult to, greenlight a show that's like fucking Mortal Kombat fatalities every episode. It's like, do you want to like Happy Tree Friends, but with anime characters? And I mean, obviously there'd be people that enjoy that. But of course, you have to, 1, have the money to produce something, and 2, you have to have some hope of getting a profit, and they probably decided they weren't going to get that. But like I said, I'm pretty sure, like, the author of Overlord isn't ending it early over some disagreement or upset about translations like that. I'm pretty sure he was always going to go to 18, because, 1, if he was going to go much further, I mean, I don't know how long that would take, but even then, it's an issue of, I mean, I'm not sure what else you could do with the story at that point. Like, I'm not sure how much more you could do. And even then, it's like, at that point, I don't know if I would live long enough. Like, at that point, we're dealing with a story that would go on for decades. So, and of course, like, there's certain characters in the, that have been alluded to in the story, in the light novels, that haven't even shown up yet in the novels, let alone in the anime. For example, you have Albedo, but she's one of 3 sisters. And of course, you've seen one of her sisters. You've seen Albedo, Negretto, but we have not seen Rubedo. We have yet to see... In fact, I mean, I know there's a few fan art ideas of Rubedo, but I don't think there's been any official art that's actual design for Rubedo yet. In fact, then even when you do that, I'm like, how do you know the voice? Though I suppose that's another thing. Like, and when it comes to anime, like take DBZ, you have multiple different dubs just for English and multiple different, music soundtracks just for the English versions. But of course, Japanese, you have its own Japanese anime. I mean, its own Japanese audio in terms of they have their own Japanese music and they have their own Japanese voice actors. Now, as far as I understand, most of the other places in the world, if they make an adaptation of it, they just change the dub. They'll edit out the original voice acting, and they'll wind up putting in just their voice actors. At which point, it's just interesting to see what voice they think fits with what language, and how does it sound like. Like, if you were to take Overlord, just the sound of Ainzul, Gon, and Albedo, and Shoutir, and Demiurge, and all them, okay, obviously, if you have the DVDs, you can hear their English voice and their Japanese voice. But then the question is, what if they were voiced in German, or Hebrew, or French? Like, what would that sound like? Especially if it was done really well. I remember one point I had the full CD collection OSTs of Final Fantasy VII. The original game music. Of course, those CDs are long gone. Heck, at one point I had the Bruce Faulkner collection of DVDs, the CDs, the soundtracks for Dragon Ball Z, which is very theatrical music. So, heck, there's quite a few channels that actually have the OSTs to this game that are out there that I think are very amazing. So, yeah, it's just, I enjoy music of a lot of different genres. I listen to music of different languages, instrumentals, and of course I'll listen like Pokemon. I have the VHS tapes of the first 3 Pokemon movies. And I enjoy the soundtracks of those first 3. Like, you have Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo. You have Pokemon 2000 with Lugia. And you have Pokemon third movie, Enki. I mean, they're great. They're just great movies, and I enjoy the music a lot. And I'll say this: I mean, even if you're a Pokemon fan who has watched those things in the past, it's probably been a while since you watched them last. But I do remember watching each of those movies several times, quite a bit. Heck, I remember when I was younger on the PS1 playing Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, all those things like a dozen times through. But nowadays, like, I struggled so much just to stick with one to get through. Like, if I buy a new RPG, it's like it's a struggle just to play it through one time. Maybe that's just part of being an adult. I don't know. Let's go in. But I was just saying, like, I enjoy seeing different media versions of a thing. I just enjoy a story. Then again, I think it's the same point with like Dragon Ball Z. Like that's why Dragon Ball Super wound up being a thing. That's why their abridged series are so popular. Because even though we've had such a blessing in terms of how much DBZ we've gotten, like how long that series was, we still want more. But of course, whatever we get more of, we want it to be good quality, and we want whatever's addition to the story to make sense. You know, we don't want some addition to the story that we feel, you know, betrays what a character is. I mean, it's fine for a character to have a character arc, but we kind of feel like it has to make sense. You can't just, like, change a random thing about a character because you think it'd be interesting, or because, you know, maybe there's some political stuff going on and you think you'd get political backlash if you don't change it, or you think that if you do change it, various like groups will actually start supporting you and you'll get groups of something like, I don't know, like say if there was some war between Japan and China and you all of a sudden change the character to be a way to be more supportive of one over the other just to get people on your side. At that point, it's like, even though you're the actual author of the show, at that point, you're stabbing your own character in the back and betraying your own because at that point, you're not doing things your own creative interest. You're doing it to please other people. And of course, I mean, we could all probably name a few video games and anime where a character in the story was changed drastically from what they initially were, not because that was part of their initial vision, but they were changed against the initial vision for the sake of pleasing some outside group that was criticizing, you know, either the author directly or something in regards to it. And they were basically just trying to, you know, get an easy win or some brownie points with people, or trying to be like, you know, global standards or something. So they'll change something about a character just to either appease somebody, but at that point it's going against the initial, not only what their initial vision for the character was, but also, like, say if they made a video game decades ago and everyone like was into the story, liked this character for this one reason, and then you completely changed that character in a way that made no sense just to appease people that initially had nothing to do with the story, a lot of people will feel betrayed on that. But again, it's just drawings, just stories. But again, there's a reason people are willing to pay the money to buy the video game. There's a reason people are willing to pay the money to buy the anime or to watch it, or why they want to buy merch of it. It's because they like it. So at the end of the day, if you shit on the thing they like, even if you're the one who created it, they're not going to take that well. And they're just going to lose interest. They'll be like, oh, you fucked up the thing I like. It's like, I really liked it, and I wanted you to keep making the thing the way I liked it. And it's just like, now with that being said, yeah, you can certainly have a character go through a character arc and a change, but it has to feel like it makes sense. And of course, there's also other anime developers, you know, writers, producers, creators, who go the opposite direction, which is great. Because at the same time, while I was saying that Like, there's some people that will take a video game character that was a set way, and that their character and their motivation was one set way. And it's not like they're going through a character arc to change. It's that there's these outside people about some political movement that criticize something, and you wind up changing your character in a way that goes completely every way against everything your character stood for no logical reason. In a way that's just completely insane. That's just, it doesn't make any sense, and it's a complete betrayal. Like, if the character had a struggle that they were going through, and they were trying to fight some sort of fate or do something, and they had some goal as their main character arc, and all of a sudden, due to some outside influence, you decide to basically completely invert that, so that all of a sudden they just pull a 180 and go completely against everything they ever went for, as if it was never a thing, and they don't even have a reason to do that. And you even start retconning your old story so that you're like, oh no, it was always that way. At which point, you were literally gaslighting your own audience. You have completely stabbed your own character in the back, and as your audience is pissed off with you, you then gaslight your audience and lie to them, say, no, that's the way it always was, and if you don't like it, well, you must be this or this bad thing, and you must be a terrible person. It's like, but you're the one who bastardized this character. It's like, you created the character, and that was awesome, and we liked the character the way the character was. But then, you just completely, like, stabbed your own character in the back to appease some outside group that was criticizing your story, and to the point that if your character actually existed, the character would absolutely hate and detest their creator at that point. Because at that point, the creator of that video game betrayed the character. And it's stupid. But like I said, there's people that go the opposite direction, like the people like Evangelion and stuff like that, who say, hey, you know what, we're not going to adapt our stuff. Now, granted, there are some reimaginings that have done, the 2.2 and the 3.3, where many people can argue that the way the story was set up was altered in a way that people could say, they didn't exactly like the way it changed. But I would say that's a much lesser example than the other thing I was thinking about earlier. But I'm trying to think of more than one example, because I don't want to just say it and just have just the one example. At that point, I guess I might need all of you guys to give me examples too. Because I can't think of more than one example, but I feel like it's so stupid of me to give you only one example. I feel like I need more than one. But I can't think of anything more than one. I mean, maybe some with Dragon Ball Evolution? I mean, does that count? Because I feel like I didn't want to say the one if I didn't have at least more than one, because I feel like it's dumb just to give you one example. Okay, maybe Dragon Ball Evolution could be the second example, like the way Goku was about stuff. Then again, I've said before, Goku was kind of a Flanderization. Like, initially, he wasn't supposed to be stupid, nor was he not supposed to be romantic. It was supposed to be, of course he doesn't know fucking calculus. He grew up in the woods. Why would he know fucking calculus? But it doesn't mean he's fucking stupid. It doesn't mean he's like some dumb moron. Like, there's no reason why Goku wouldn't be smart. Heck, even the thing about him hitting his head was technically kind of a retcon. That initially wasn't a thing. Then again, the main reason, Toriyama didn't want Goku to get rid of his tail because he got tired of drawing the tail all the time. Whole reason he didn't use Super Saiyan 3 very often was because he didn't want to draw the giant flowy hair all the time. Heck, the whole point of Super Saiyan initially was to save money on ink from having to draw in his black hair all the time. Heck, Tien's just bald Goku with a third eye and bigger shoulders. It's like a lot of times, there are a lot of characters, it's a set style, so of course you're going to see it in different characters from character to character, but at the same time, it's just it's kind of like the same way you just see someone draw something in the style of Akira Toriyama. You can tell that it's Akira Toriyama, even if you're drawing Naruto characters in that style. Like, there's people that have done challenges to draw one character in another style from another style to another style. But I'll tell you this. It's just, he's not meant to be stupid. Goku is not meant to be stupid. It's Flanderization. It's like Ned Flanders. Ned Flanders was just supposed to be an average, normal dude. He was supposed to be like the stand-in of like your average person seeing Homer from a third-person point of view. Like, he was supposed to be... It's like that random, the harem protagonist with the messed up hair who's, he's supposed to be... Or take, heck, even Robert from the Dispatch game. That's a new thing. It's supposed to be a self-insert so that you can imagine yourself in the story. Because, let's be clear, in real life... the way the people are all flirty and like you and shit, that ain't happening in real life. You're not. Then again, people say maybe that's just because that's just you, Lunar. Maybe I'm just that terrible at interpersonal relationships and people finding me attractive. But then again, I can admit I'm ugly as fuck, so I understand that. I'm ugly, I'm chubby, I'm poor, and I have depression. Obviously, things that are not interesting to people. Gotcha. But aside from the fact that I'm a worthless piece of shit and no one could ever actually love or care about me, that's beside the point. Main point is the harem protagonist is supposed to be, after all, heck, even take Tenchi Muyo. Everyone just, you imagine yourself as Tenchi Muyo. But keep in mind, most of us watching Tenchi Muyo, that random, fat, chubby guy with the big nose who's ugly as shit at his school that you meet for, 5 seconds? That's what probably most of us who watch the show actually look like. Like, have you ever played Deathmark? That character Shimio? That's basically what I look like. Or, Lavos from Chrono Trigger? Again, that's what I look like. Or, Saya. Sayonara. The pink-haired girl from, Doki Doki Literature Club. That scene of her in the bedroom when you last see her. Again, that's what I look like. Or take the Venus, the Cacophobia character from the Fiend Folio Binding of Isaac. That's what I look like. Heck, I made a video featuring that and Goku and Saya basically being like, it's Goku fighting your depression and shit. I thought it was funny. It's a Deep Labs Part 31, I think. But, main point being, Goku is Flanderized. He's supposed to be smart. You look at the harem protagonist, you're supposed to be able to envision yourself in that place. Then again with Goku, how many of us have said Kaioken while we're jogging, or tried pretending we're firing off a Kamehameha? But at the same time as this, Ned Flanders is supposed to be the average, normal dude. And at best, he was supposed to just be some guy who goes to church, lives a normal life. He was just supposed to go to church like a normal amount. It wasn't supposed to be his whole character. He was just supposed to be an average dude. Just a completely average dude. But as they kept pushing on the nice guy persona and him going to church all the time, being obsessed, they push it to where he's absolutely obsessed with, the Bible and church and everything. They reduced Ned Flanders to a one-dimensional character. It's one thing you can build on a character and get more depth to a character and expand them. But at the same time, if you hit on the same nail over and over and over again, that becomes all they're about. Same way, Goku, they kept pushing on him being dumb and stupid all the time. Sometimes just for a cheap laugh. And I felt like it degraded the character. And it's just he's not supposed to be stupid. And same thing, the whole romance thing. He's not supposed to be aromantic, asexual, whatever. It was supposed to be that Akira Toriyama, one, knew that the genre that he was working on was action and comedy. And he didn't want to be drawing or writing a romance story or a slice of life. He wanted to stick to heavy focus on action with a little bit of comedy. He didn't want. So a lot of the omission of that stuff was just because, that's not what he wanted the story to be about. Two, it's also rating issues. You're You can't have a fucking sex scene of Goku and Chi-Chi in a show meant for kids. It's kind of like, again, Batman. Why doesn't Batman kill the villains? Because it's rated Y7. You can't have the hero that fucking 7-year-olds are watching, you know, being told that you can kill the bad guys. You can't tell kids that. So from a logical standpoint, if you go from in-universe reason, and again, that's like diegenic stuff. You diegenic music, non-diegenic music. You know, what kind of, like, diegenic means, like, if it's non-diegenic, it means that the characters in the story can't hear the music. If it's diegenic, it means it's music that actually exists in the universe that the characters can actively hear. It's kind of like narrator. Can the character in, if there's a narrator in a Batman show, can Batman hear the narrator? But it's just like, you know, in story, okay, makes sense. Batman doesn't want to do it because he's a symbol of hope and justice, and because it's very traumatic for him, and it's a huge mental burden for him. That's understandable, and about honor. But at the same time, even in universe, let's be clear, not even ignoring all the injustice stuff, like even by the first episode of the Batman animated series, it would make sense for every government, both on the local, state, and federal level, even international level, to have executed the Joker. It also makes sense that you would have lots of people, like other villains, that would have just killed the Joker because he's very inconvenient to their plans. Like, most of these villains would have just killed each other. And heck, in Injustice, like, they wouldn't be like, oh, Superman's going to punch Joker through the chest. Let's get this straight. Even in a world that's outlawed the death penalty, you fucking nuke a city, they're going to make an exception for you. And if they don't, you're going to wish you were dead, because I doubt they're going to treat you very well. You don't need some superpowered person to punch you through the chest, because even in that world, like, they're going to execute you. And even then, there's also the fact that just, even if Batman's not trying to kill anyone, you have a guy who's super fucking strong and jacked punching people. I mean, they're bound to just, like, you know, get too hard of a concussion, fall and hit their head on the ground, and, like, even if Batman's not trying to kill them, even if he's holding back and he's pulling his punches, it's very likely that people are just going to die by accident. But of course, even if you, like, ignore all that, let's be clear. The main reason Batman doesn't kill people is because it's a show for kids. Yes, many of us who watch now are adults and have been adults for like a couple decades now. Like, I'm 38. Heck, I'll be 39 in about a month or so. That being said, you know, I still enjoy all the same shows I did grow up. I mean, I still like stuffed animals. You know, I'm still the person who, I'll talk to a stuffed animal, I'll hug stuffed animals. I like stuffed animals. You know, maybe I'm a bit too sentimental. I don't know. I like stuffed animals. Heck, if it rains, I like to sit on the front porch and watch it rain. It's just, you can't have a show meant for kids where the hero kills people. Not only is that introducing the kid to an absurd amount of violence, but you can't be telling kids that it's okay to kill people. One, even if you were telling kids, like, no, it's wrong to kill people, you still wouldn't, like, even if Batman was the hero who would never ever kill no matter what, and he's the hero of justice, let's be clear, Joker, all of his deaths are, you know, it's not drawn super, like, it's not like people are being shown as decapitated and blood spurting everywhere. You just have people hunched over or exploded, and it's not like there's chunks of viscera left everywhere. It's just like a firework, basically. Or like, oh, the Joker toxin. Okay, they're just smiling as opposed to, you know, necrotic flesh. And even then, it's drawn a certain way to where it's less impactful. You know, it's not like it's drawn hyper-realistic dead bodies. No, it's just like, oh, it's a cartoon character, but they're smiling a little bit more. And they seem kind of vacant. Like, obviously still disturbing, but... and of course, again, it's meant for kids. One, you can't, you know, teach kids to kill people, but two, you don't want to scare your entire audience to where they're not willing to come back because they're having nightmares all the time. And that's the thing, you couldn't have Chi-Chi, like, here's the thing, and same with Goku. Like, you don't have Goku, like, ripping out people's intestines and gouge. Like, Goku's not going full fucking Kratos on fucking Frieza. You know? He's not, like, doing, original God of War trilogy type shit. It's not, explicit fucking gore. It's not like we're seeing Vegeta do a fucking Sub-Zero fatality and rip someone's head and skull and spinal cord out of their body. One, also, that would probably be a lot more effort to draw, too, and a lot more effort to animate, so that'd also be more expensive. But also, again, you can't really... you'd probably scare most of the audience, and even then, that would bring up the rating, and of course, that would make it harder to sell the product. There'd be stores and stuff that would refuse to carry it. And certain TV channels that would refuse to show it. But, but it's just, be mindful of that. It's like, for example, you can't have sex scenes. Like, for example, Family Matters. We can all assume that Carl Winslow was fucking his wife regularly, right? But you're not, actively seeing a full-on nude sex scene of it. And, of course, none of us want to see that. It's like in the Power Rangers. Okay, I assume people were having sex, but we're not seeing, all the Power Rangers humping each other. That wouldn't be appropriate. Really, for any age. Unless it was, being aired on the fucking Pornhub. Okay? But at the same time, you understand... okay, here's Power Rangers. It's a kid-friendly show. It doesn't mean everyone in that universe isn't having sex now. It just means we're not showing that. And of course, Akira Toriyama, not only was he being mindful of, one, that he didn't want to do the genre of being a romance or slice of life, but also he had to be mindful of, being explicit when it came to sexual themes and rating. And of course, any amount of time you spend... even if you were being romantic between characters, that's time taken away from animating a fight scene or something to do with the actual plot. And of course, you had to spend half the episode yelling, and of course that's important. Kai took that out, but I think that was an important part of the character building. Just Goku fucking the whole time. But here's the thing, guys. Here's the main thing. Akira Toriyama, I think he was an amazing artist in every way. I think he was great at coming up with a story. I love Dragon Ball Z. But I'll tell you this, he himself felt that he was not a good writer when it came to romance and when it came to slice of life stuff. Not only did he want to avoid that genre because he wanted his story to be mainly about action and comedy, but also because he felt that he wouldn't do a good job at writing a romance story. He felt that he wasn't really good at it, and he wouldn't write a good one, and he wouldn't be a good quality story. And again, maybe I feel Akira Toriyama was being a little too hard on himself. I think he could have done it if he wanted to. But of course, I'd want it to be extra stuff here and there. I wouldn't want it to take away from the main show. And of course, really, if you want to do a romance thing, either it had to be its own separate side OVA or a different story. Its own unique characters. If there's anybody that can make up whole new original characters, if they wanted to really do their own side genre of something else, he certainly could. It'd be like if you're the creator of StarCraft and the original Warcraft RTSs, but you decide you want to make a Mortal Kombat style, fighter. You don't have to use... Granted, yes, you could use characters from StarCraft and Warcraft, and we'd all probably find that pretty awesome. But in the same regard, if you really wanted to make this different genre of game, a fighter instead of an RTS, certainly that person would have the creativity to come up with all new characters. And a whole new universe for it to take place in. Heck, same thing with this person here. They wrote Higurashi. And while we are seeing a few parallels, with Frederick and Bern Costello and stuff, a few carryovers, but for the most part, 99.99%, this is a completely new story that, it's not just a rehashing or reimagining of Higurashi. And even then, I still feel like I would like a different... because there's different versions of the Higurashi story that wound up coming around here and there. And I wouldn't be against more of it, but I feel like, it's had its conclusion. But of course, I mean, if there was more, I'd probably watch it. Same thing if suddenly after I beat chapter 8, episode 8 when I get to that, and I'm currently episode 4, if suddenly there's a new umineko story, maybe I'd consider that. Heck, I know initially for a long time while I was playing Higurashi, I was like, I'm not going to play umineko. Like, I'll never get to it. And here I am. I'm planning to do all of it. But yeah, it's just... You can't have Goku doing sexual thing. And again, it's just, they treated the omission of the stuff. It's like fucking keys for a fucking toddler. Like, oh, you're not actively seeing the keys in front of you. It must not exist. It's like fucking object permanence. But when it comes to plot points of a character and who they are as a person, it's like, oh, Goku doesn't show romance in the show. It must not exist. Same way as, oh, Goku, we don't see scenes of Goku doing math, so he must be like a complete moron. It's like, no, we flander. You guys made him more one-dimensional. You kind of took from him. Yep. And again, it's just, sometimes that happens just in the progress of writing a story. And other times, like I said, sometimes an author will actively like stab their own character in the back. Like, say, Guilty Gear. Bridget started off purely as, like, the femboy Otonoko type character. Basically, it was a character that was clearly a guy who was fighting to identify as a guy, but still be accepted as a guy, even if he, looked a little bit unconventionally, not the air quotes, masculine stereotype. And again, that's part of, like, initially at that point when it first came out, it was like the idea is that you don't have to exactly fit into a fucking, the gender norms. Like, you can be a guy and look like, the old school Bridget from 2003 and so. Same way, you can have tomboys. You can have a woman who likes, video games and being outdoors and wearing pants and stuff like that. The idea is going against the whole gender norms thing. You don't have to be a certain thing. It doesn't make you less of a guy. And heck, you could basically be like Bridget, and you're like, doesn't mean Bridget has to be gay, but of course there was always that meme, like, people are gay for Bridget. Or even gay for Stolfo. It's like this. Now, of course, there are some people that are trans and see that as a identification thing for them, and that's good for them. It's a drawing. Everyone should be able to accept it for, what they liked in the story. But the main point is that initially the whole point of that character was it was a guy trying to just be comfortable in himself for how he is, despite it not being, air quotes, normal in everyone else's view, but to still be accepted as a man and, be respected as he was. And then later on, you wind up getting it turned around to where it's like, as if he's trying to identify as a woman. And again, I mean, if there's people out there that feel that way, that makes them feel better to see the story that way, then good for you. It's a story. Interpret it however you want. But it's largely like, I mean, heck, there was a point early on in the older version of the story where, Gold Lewis was talking about how it's, an emotional insecurity of Bridget's that could be used against him to manipulate and control him. At which point, the whole point of it wasn't about Bridget's well-being. It was about just, how can I utilize this person as a weapon for the government? But at the end of the day is this. You have to consider, like, what's in someone's best interest. And at the end of the day, it's a fictional character. But, of course, it's nice to analyze fictional stories because it helps as an exercise of, like, critical thinking. And, of course, if you see Bridget one way or the other, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to view it one way or the other. But it certainly is a situation that the author basically changed that character just to please outside political influences. So they adapted their own work to what other people were saying. Whereas this is the inverse. And of course, again, it feels like a betrayal of a lot of people that, identified with Bridget as being like the femboy sort of character. It's like saying that, okay, if you're a guy who doesn't fit in the normal stereotype gender roles of what it is to be a man, well, you must obviously be a girl, right? I mean, you look like a girl and you act like you must be a girl. Like, no, you can still be a man. It doesn't mean you have to. It's like, at that point, you're basically treating it like, oh, there's this guy who's like 5'8", or likes things. He's not as masculine as other people where he likes to do computer programming or stuff. So that means he must be trans. Like, no, you don't have to. And at that point, it's like this. It's like, it wouldn't be right to force someone who's trans to not be trans. But at the same time, it's like, it wouldn't be right to force somebody who is not trans to be trans against their will. Like, that's also fucked up and wrong. Again, talking about fictional characters. But keep in mind the fact that this is bridging into, like, how do people interact in real life? And again, there's also the concept of understanding the difference between fantasy and reality. Like, at the end of the day, you need to be able to differentiate anime and real life. You need to be able to tell the difference between a fucking video game and real life. Now, yes, it's a lot of fun to analyze a story. And of course, many of the characters can be fascinating. And like, think of all the different characters in this story. They're absolutely incredible. Heck, I absolutely would not be against seeing a woman doing a cosplay of Kyrie. Or heck, maybe just even an AI edit of Ivy from Soul Calibur 2 dressed in a cosplay of the outfit that Kairi Uchinomiya wears. Or even, again, I think looks like Kaoru Nagisa. I think he looks like both Ivy and Kairi as well. I'm bisexual, so I can like both of them. Though obviously I have a strong preference for Kairi and Ivy. But point being is like, the inverse of that is that you then have the creators of Evangelion. Again, you had some issues with the 2.22 versions and the 3.33 version where people could argue that things were kind of changed. And of course, like, I think there were some video games, I forget what consoles they were made for it. I definitely didn't see them myself around here, so I think they were Japanese only releases. But I think it was like Shinji Ikari and the Full Metal Girlfriend or something like that. It was some of that one girl, like, I think it was before that one character ever existed. From the 3.3 version. To where it was the idea like Shinji wound up like meeting this new girl and falling in love with her and having a relation with her. Then again, I've read quite a few lemons of the story. Which, keep in mind, it's not a lime. It's a lemon. A lemon being a novelization or a fan fiction of basically just a written story of no pictures of hentai. It's basically just porn, but instead of pictures like hentai and manga, it's just paragraphs and paragraphs of story, and you're just reading it and imagining it in your head. Now, technically, there are limes out there too, but limes are more gore focused and not my cup of tea. But, though I do enjoy quite a few horror video games that get a bit disturbing. But again, when it comes to erotic stuff, I don't like mixing them together. It's kind of like you enjoy certain genres together. It's like peanut butter and chocolate. But when it comes to like gore and hentai stuff, that's like mixing chocolate and like cayenne peppers. I mean, I like spice and I like chocolate, but together it's fucking gross and disgusting. Though, when it comes to fan fiction, there's tons of really good fan fictions. There's a person called Stefan Gagne, Stefan Gagne, who wrote enormously long novels of fan fictions, but they were like really incredibly good quality. Of the Slayers series, they wrote a reimagining of the first season, Slayers Virtual. They did it as like a cyberpunk futuristic thing. And then they also did their own standalone continuation of the third season called Demiurge or Dimerge. And then they also did a different continuation of the third season in a completely different direction, but it was his own trilogy of novels. They were all very long. I think it was Chaos, Reflection, or I think it was Reflection, Chaos, and Rebirth. It is very good stories, amazing good stories, and in very good taste. They're not, sexual or anything. They're just really well-told stories, and they have a lot to them. Same regard, I remember there being a fan fiction called Shinji and Warhammer 40k. It was an alternate telling of the story of Shinji of Evangelion, but as a novel, But it's, what if Shinji Ikari came across all the Warhammer books very early on in life, and he wound up having his personality changed and warped by Warhammer 40k. But main point I'm going with this, people, I think also the creator of Nier Automata was also agreeing with this statement of the creator of Evangelion was saying that anime and, you know, him, they need to not be adapting themselves or trying to make themselves palpable to, you know, Western audiences or global people or tourists. Basically people that are not used to anime or that. That anime needs to stay what it is. And that other people either have to adapt or just not read or watch the anime. That basically, if it's not your cup of tea, then don't have it. But you don't get to criticize it and say it shouldn't exist. Like, oh, this thing's too sexual or this thing's too violent. No, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And that's the thing. It's like I'm saying Evangelion. It's like, hey, I'm going to write my characters and do my show the way I want it. Yes, I understand there's things that I wrote in the story in the past that people nowadays wouldn't share in the sensibilities of anymore. But too bad. My story is staying the same. I'm not going to censor it. I'm not going to change it. And I'm not going to write characters in a new way. I'm going to write the characters the way I want to write. I want to draw them the way I want to draw them. And I'm going to make the story the way I want the story to be. The characters are going to behave and be who I want them to be. And you can either adapt them yourself, or you can stop. It's like someone's making an anime and people say, oh, I don't like this anime because it's this and this and that's offensive to this group, and oh, why are there not enough people of this one ethnicity in your anime? And the person's like, I'm doing the anime the way I want. I'm not going to change what I'm doing to please you. And of course, I was saying earlier with those other examples, it's a bit annoying when you see someone who does have a vision and they then adapt their vision based on criticism of others. And again, you need to be able to take some criticism. I mean, you need to be able to understand, you know, a bit of realism, you know, understand what people think. You know, that is part of growing and learning to draw better about certain things. If someone says, well, I don't like this. But I mean, technically, that was some of the stuff that happened editing when it came to DBZ. Like initially, you know, there was criticism of Dr. Giro and the, you know, 19 and 20, because originally they were supposed to be main androids, and people were like, what, some old dude? And then after that, you're like, oh, yeah, 17 and 18, and like, they're just a bunch of teenagers. That's not scary. It's like, well, you were criticized too old. Now they're too young? Like, what the fuck? And then it's like, what about Cell? He's like, he's too scary. The fuck you, okay? How about this? This is his new perfect form. Yeah, he's too bulky. How about this? Yeah, that's perfect Cell. It's fine. And of course, I think I remember at one point, the Boo Saga, he was wanting to try to take inspiration from old-style American Western stuff. And again, that's not an issue of adapting to, you know, like a modern, broad audience. That was like an issue of the person themselves, like, was really into like Westerns, and they're like, you know, they just want to enjoy this thing because they like it that way. It's kind of Corin did the Path of Totality stuff with Skrillex. It's not an issue of trying to please other people. It's just they wanted to have fun with it that way, and it was something they legitimately wanted to do. Heck, it's kind of like take the people like Serge Tankian from System Down. If I remember right, he really enjoyed the Beatles growing up, and I remember he at one point did like a saxophone jazz album, not because he was trying to please people, but because he just was always kind of interested in doing that, and just he thought it would be fun. And that's the thing. It's like I definitely have a lot of respect for that, to where if someone is doing something, they're doing it because they enjoy it. And especially if like you're someone who does anime and stuff, if you're used to one genre, you do another genre, but you're not doing it because you're trying to please other people. You're doing it because you just always were kind of curious about that genre and you just want to have fun with it. Heck, the person who all the character designs and the main artist and story person of like what is it? Helsing, you know, Alucard and Saris, Victoria and all that. Originally, he started as a hentai artist. That shit was originally hentai characters. What was another thing I was thinking about? All right, there's what was that? There's the one Mushoku Tensei dude. Like, that's a pretty good story, and I like the art style for those characters, the way they're drawn. But there's actually, what is it, Orc Eroica? Which initially when I got that mini light novel, which some pictures, but it's not definitely not a manga, doesn't have enough pictures for it. I'll tell you this, it's definitely not a hentai. But I certainly thought it was a hentai when I bought it, but it's not. But it's by the same person. And Eroica, not erotica, Eroica is E-R-O-I-C... Fuck. E-R-O-C... Why can't I fucking remember how to spell this correctly? E-R-O-I-C-A, if I remember right. I don't feel like double checking that. Main point is this. There's no letter T in it. Erotica obviously means a story with a very sexual, sensual themes. Whereas Eroica is about a hero's journey. Like the Odyssey. You know, the 1997 movie, Armand Assante with Odysseus. That would be an Eroica. You know, the stories by Homer. You know, it's a hero's journey. Two different things, but the letter T makes a big difference. But it's a very good story. It's about this really tall orc dude who is trying to seek a wife, and he's traveling around the world saving the innocent and helping to stop wars and shit, all the while trying to romantically and chivalrously court a woman, and obviously failing over and over in silly ways. But at the end of the day is this. It's essentially, it's medieval chivalry. It's like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. It's that kind of story. It's that kind of genre. Heck, remember, for the longest time before the internet existed, when we only had mass printed books that were like, you know, printed books, you know, before internet was really a thing, the most printed book in the entire world was the King James Version of the Bible. But the second most published book in the world was Don Quixote. It was a book, I think, written in like the 14th, 15th, 16th something century. I can't remember anymore. By a dude called Don Cervantes. Or Sir Cervantes. Anyway, I remember he was like in Spain or Italy or something. I can't remember. Spain, obviously. But anyway. He wrote his story. And again, very interesting. Ivy from Soul Calibur 2. Her father is named Cervantes. Different Cervantes, by the way. But anyway, so Sir Cervantes wrote the story of Don Quixote, which is supposed to take place like a couple hundred years before Cervantes himself was born. And it was the idea of, you know, Don Quixote was essentially an otaku. Like, if you compare it to modern times, he was basically an otaku. He was a weeb. Because at the end of the day is this. Don Quixote was a man who, from birth, had enough money that he never had to actually work for a living. But he was never exactly rich, if you know what I mean. Like, he was never rich, he was never famous, he never really had any major status in society. But he just had enough status that he was just considered, okay, that's Don Quixote. You know, it's like, I'm trying to think of something that's like comparable to that, but I really can't think of it. Like, but at the end of the day is this. I don't remember if Don Quixote or what Cervantes actually did for a living. Obviously, Cervantes wrote a story. I guess we could look on Google real quick. Okay. Miguel de Cervantes earned money, and again, this is just an AI overview from Google search, so take it His first significant novel, titled La Galatea, was published in 1585, but he continued to work as a purchasing agent, later as a government tax collector. Anyway, so earned money through various civil service jobs, primarily as a tax collector, a commissary of the Spanish Armada, and a royal messenger, but was often in debt and jailed due to financial troubles, never making a comfortable living from his writing during his lifetime, despite his later success of Don Quixote. Okay, so he was a commissary for the Spanish Armada, doing like requisition supplies for grain, oil, which involved a lot of travel but didn't pay very well. It wasn't lucrative. He was a tax collector. He was also accused of misappropriation and was jailed for that. Then again, that reminds me of something. The original author of Dante's Inferno wrote that while being in jail himself. There was like I think a real life Beatrice that he liked, but apparently, according to the difference in status and society, he wasn't allowed to like her. It'd be like Canon liking Jessica in Umineko. He was also a soldier at one point. He was wounded at the Battle of Lepanto and later captured and held as a slave. Let's see, he was a civil servant and a messenger. He sought and held various government posts, including a royal messenger role, but often found them difficult to secure or profit from. Let's see, despite writing Don Quixote, which became a massive hit, and like I said, it was, with the exception of the Bible, Don Quixote was, at least until the dawn of the internet, the most published book in the world. Cervantes sold the publishing rights and saw little profit from it. His writing, including plays, didn't provide a stable income, forcing him into unpopular and often financially precarious government roles. He frequently faced debt and spent time in prison for financial issues related to his tax collection duties. So in general, his life sucked. I mean, heck, if we look back at stuff, I mean, who was it that wrote the Canterbury Tales? I remember the Canterbury Tales. Geoffrey Chaucer? Like, I don't remember how his personal life went. And of course Shakespeare, I really don't know how well he lived. And then of course Edgar Allan Poe, I mean, he wasn't exactly known to have a very happy life. I mean, most of the painters that are famous nowadays were in complete poverty and alcoholism during their whole course of their lives, and many of them ended their lives under less than happy circumstances. Okay, granted, Don Quixote is a fictional character, but let's see. What's the AI overview on Don Quixote? Don Quixote is a Spanish gentleman who, after reading too many chivalry novels, loses his mind and decides to become a knight errant, embarking on an absurd quest across Spain and with his squire Sancho Panza to revive chivalry, right wrongs, and defend the the helpless, famously mistaking windmills for giants and inns for castles, actions that highlight the clash between this idealized world and reality, ultimately ending a comic failure, but also profound commentary on dreams and realities. And here's the thing. This was the second most popular book. The only book in the world that was more popular than this in the past was the Bible. And this stayed that way until, the internet. The internet changed everything. But at least until then, this was the most published, most popular story in the world. And this is basically the story of an otaku. Because basically what this is Don Quixote, and like I said, it didn't say anything about his income or anything, but if memory serves, Don Quixote was born into a decent amount of money and status, but not enough. He was never rich. He could never live luxuriously. But he had his own home. He didn't have to work for a living. He had money to purchase food. He could invest in a couple of things and was basically able to live off of that. And he spent most of his time getting his mangas and his anime, and he watched it. Now, of course, it says here, it's like you're reading too many chivalry novels. King Arthur, Lancelot, Merlin, stuff like that. The Knights of the Round Table. basically, he read that stuff and he felt like, okay, these stories, these characters are so courageous and noble. And he looked at real life and he was just disappointed. Everyone was a complete fucking asshole in comparison. It'd be like, and it's just essentially that's what was the popular story back then? The story of an otaku who is obsessed with his novels and his anime and his manga and his video games. Who decided to go out and try to live his own life. Basically, rather than getting izakai'd by a fucking truck, he went out and basically started living as if he was the anime character. Though, given the way he hallucinates certain things, and given the fact that he's considered to be someone of a decent age when he does this, he's like elderly, I think he may have had Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's or something. Anyway, let's click back over here on the... But yeah, I forget why I brought up Don Quixote. My main point, like the author of Evangelion, saying they want to, stay true to, like, what their view of anime is. They don't want to change anime to please other people. Heck, it's kind of like... Sometimes if on TV, when they air like Rush Hour with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, they'll put a disclaimer at the front saying that, oh, the humor back then isn't aged well and it may not be appropriate for all audiences. But it's like, okay, you think people are going to be that offended and can't handle Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker? It's like, well, it's got racial humor and stuff. It's like the same thing with Die Hard. They have, like, stuff that happens in original Die Hard movies and stuff, and then again, it's the same thing, like, you have people saying the old stories by George Orwell or H.G. Wells are offensive and people can't handle those things. Or that if you do have them, you need to change and censor and edit it, which, I mean, think of the irony of that if you're taking stuff from you're taking the story of 1984 and you're changing and editing and redacting parts of it because you want to change the way the story is, when it's like, I mean, isn't that, given the point of the story is how, the government and that is constantly just rechanging history over and over to the point that nobody can fucking have a coherent thought, and you're basically having thought crimes, and, oh, you can't think this way and have this, but it's like, doesn't that apply to the modern stuff going on? The whole idea of a thought crime? Or like, oh, you're having a view of things that it's considered inappropriate, or you're basically classifying a viewpoint or a discussion or an argument as violence. But then you have people being violent about shit, and that's classified as just, oh, that's just free speech. But I mean, they're actively being violent and physically assaulting people. You have people literally being deranged and psychotic and just acting like animals, and that's like just going around attacking people, and that's considered, oh, you're treating like that's justified. But then people just having a normal conversation, oh, that's considered violence. And then when the people just trying to have a peaceful conversation get literally publicly murdered, you then blame the peaceful person for getting murdered. It's like blaming Martin Luther King for, dying, or blaming Abraham Lincoln. It's like, well, he should have known better than to, do stuff that was, disagree with people. So it's like, what the fuck? But, yeah, it's just the author of Evangelion. But then again, you have, like, times where there's some countries that want to make certain animes illegal, or make certain video games illegal, or make protesting illegal, or make disagreeing with some government narrative illegal. I mean, heck, there's several countries in Europe that if you send a text or search something on Google, or if you post something on Facebook or X that's like criticizing the government or disagreeing with whatever's, the zeitgeist or narrative that the government is pushing, even if you're just criticizing people that are actively doing bad things, you could literally have cops show up at your house to arrest you, saying that you're spreading hate or instigating violence and you're going to get people hurt by disagreeing with the government, by voicing your dissent, by just saying, hey, I disagree with this circumstance. I don't like this going on. I have an opinion about something. And a lot of times it's just like the people that are saying, oh, this is hate speech, was like, technically the person doing the air quotes hate speech is the person standing up for human rights. And usually the people trying to like silence the people who are speaking about these things are actually the people that are the fascists and the Nazis. They're the ones who are literally, fighting to hurt their political opponents and to censor free speech and to take away self-defense abilities and even sovereignty and autonomy of the citizens in a country. It's just, and heck, a lot of times those people would label, heck, people like myself or anyone who agrees with me as a Nazi. And a lot of times, these people will go around and they'll label somebody as a Nazi. Not because they're a Nazi. In fact, usually the people labeling the other people Nazis are Nazis themselves. But actually the people being labeled as Nazis are actually the opposite of a Nazi. And you're just labeling them that as an excuse to paint them with a target to say that it's justifiable to do evil, horrible things to that person. At that point, I mean, how is that any different than how Hitler talked bad about the Jews and then used that as justification to literally purge them? I mean, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. But like the person who's the main, like I think it's also the same thing with the person who did not Bayonetta, but probably Bayonetta too. Yeah, actually Bayonetta as well. There was also I forget what it was. It was some sort of new Gundam Mars. I might be remembering that name wrong. There was like a Gundam Mars or something that had a thing going on with it, but I know Bayonetta also had the same viewpoint. But heck, I think also Hogwarts and the creator of that and the Harry Potter stuff had the same issue. Heck, even the people at Lord of the Rings wound up getting criticized for certain things too. But I think predominantly the author of what was it? Nier Automata, the game, as well as particularly Evangelion, the author of that, was saying, hey, anime, we're not going to adapt our anime and our stuff to suit other people's tastes. Basically, we're not going to deal with all these tons of anime tourists coming in, acting like fucking Puritans and saying, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, you need to change this, that's offensive, that's racist, that's this. No, it's no, we're just going to do our story the way we want to. We're going to basically stand firm, have a spine, and we're like, hey, we are going to have our anime the way that we want to do our anime. And you guys can either like it or go away. The other audiences can adapt to what we write, but we will not change or adapt or self-censor our stuff just to suit these people who really don't even like this stuff, and they're just trying to impose their views on something that has nothing to do with them. And keep in mind, again, it's a fictional story. They're just trying to write a fictional story that people enjoy, or even write their own views on things. It'd be like if George Orwell was trying to write 1984, and people tried to tell him, no, you can't write that about that. That's racist, or that's against this one group of people, or that could be taken as offensive against that group of people, or oh, that's kind of vulgar here, or that one part of the story where George Orwell's main character meets that one girl and makes the buttered toast and they meet in a field, oh, that's too sexual, or it doesn't have enough gay sex, it's not gay enough. And again, here's the thing, I like a lot of gay hentai. But I don't want it put in fucking everything. Like, here's the thing. I like, you know, animes and stuff that do have, you know, a little bit of, air quotes, flavor, if you will. But I'll tell you this, I don't want it just being injected to fucking everything, like it's trying to fill some sort of fucking quota. I don't want to be like, hey, here's the Power Rangers, and they're all gay now. Like, no, they don't have to be gay. There's nothing wrong with anybody being gay. That's perfectly fine. But you don't have to, like, you know, force it into fucking everything to where it's just everywhere. You know? You don't have to... The story... Not every story has to have it in it. You know? But, oh well. I've gone enough of a thing. Let's actually just play this game. Because we have spent an hour and a half of me just being a tangent. I keep saying I'm not going to go on tangents, and it's like this entire episode. I mean, this entire video was just me going on a ridiculously long tangent. Again, do you guys remember the whole Super Mario 1 game where you get infinite, you know, glitches? I mean, infinite lives from that glitch from the turtle shell? Heck, here's a question. You know, like there's a little one-up mushrooms that give you extra lives? What if every time a Mario dies in the Mario universe, you prestige and come back and you're a different person, but the corpse doesn't go away. It just goes under the ground and starts growing. Like, what if the one-up mushrooms grow from the corpses of dead Marios? Well, it was that time of day after all. Everyone in the shopping district was either a shop owner lowering the shutters of their shops, or an employee rushing, or else staggering on their way home. Amidst all that, Maria, who was in a good mood, like someone on a hike, probably looked quite merry. Every once in a while, passing employees would glance at her with eyes of someone seeing something out of place. Office ladies giggled at the cute, stuffed animal poking its head out of the knapsack. Heck, that's another thing. I feel like a lot of people in modern day would probably look back on Higurashi and probably even Umineko. And of course, I am not even halfway through the story yet of Umineko. But I feel like a lot of people would look at these stories and be like, oh, this thing's about that's offensive and that's inappropriate and this is a problem. But it's like, it's a story. You can't just go to a library and burn every story you don't like. Now, you can say, okay, maybe certain stories shouldn't be for certain grades. I could certainly say, you know, maybe you shouldn't have, you know, stuff that's too mature or too violent in like a fucking primary school. But, I mean, you could certainly have it in a restricted area of a public library or in a library that's at least for people that are at least teenagers. I mean, treat it the way Blockbuster did, okay? Blockbuster had plenty of movies and stuff that were, you know, very mature, but they had no policy against carrying that stuff. You just had to be a certain age to get it. It's kind of like, say, alcohol. People can drink if they want. They just have to be a certain age, and they need to not be like driving a car while doing it, or like giving themselves liver poisoning, blood poisoning. The supermarket had been closed for a while by this time. However, convenience stores, which had been growing in popularity lately, stayed open until midnight. It was very convenient for Maria, whose mother's return was often late. Maria lowered the knapsack from her back and, carrying it like a child in her arms, she headed over to the sweet buns corner. She pointed to a sweet bun she had eaten before, explaining to Sakutaru that this one was delicious and that one was pretty good too. Sakutaru seemed to be enjoying it a lot. I'm going to have the 3-colored one. I already forgot what we were talking about. Like croissants? Were we talking about croissants? I already forgot. Sweet buns. Okay. With just this one, you can eat the bean jam and cream and strawberry jam. But there's sometimes greenish brown bean jam or white bean jam. There should be one kind of bean jam. Uryu. Looks like having different things inside them makes them interesting. Uryu? Next, I'll have a fruit yogurt. There's fruit in it, but it isn't a sweet, right? Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm sure Mom will be fine with it. Do you want one too, Sakutaru? Uryu? Is that really okay? What about the money? No problem. Look, it's Shotoku Taishi? So I can buy you whatever you want, too, Sakutaru. Let's eat together. Would you like some yogurt, too, Sakutaru? When Maria made to grab another one of the same fruit yogurt, Sakutaru bent his head, slightly worried. Uryu? But I can't eat a big one, so a small one will be fine. Then how about a small yogurt? It's 30 yen. That's cheap. Uryu! That's good enough for me. Yogurt with Maria. Yogurt with Sakutaru. Ooh. Maria put the 3-colored bread and the 2 yogurts into a shopping basket and brought them to the register. Why don't you just have food in the fridge at home to begin with? The man running the register had been in charge of the tobacco shop that had been here until yesterday. I seem to be seeing you a lot at this time of day, little lady. You're a good girl, but maybe you'd better come with your mother if you're going to go shopping at this time in the future, okay? Mama said it's okay, so it's fine. Mama always comes home late because of her work. But we aren't lonely. Right, Sakutaru? Uryu, this is depressing as I mean, it's great you have a stuffed animal, but it feels very much that you are overly, bonded to the stuffed animal because you're so fucking isolated and alone. It's more of a coping mechanism for something else that makes you super sad. Really? That sounds tough. Here, I'll give you some free soda. The man working at the store took a can of leftover soda or something from behind the register and packed it into the bag with everything else. Thank you, mister. Isn't that great, Sakutaru? Uryu. Since she had been told not to buy soda, she couldn't take it back home, so she decided to drink it on her way back and not bring the empty can back home. With the vinyl bag with the sweet bun in it around her elbow, holding the knapsack with Sakutaru in it, with the same arm and drinking the soda, the two of them walked home. I can definitely see how this could end poorly. But I feel like the proper solution, given that the bag, if the can of soda wasn't opened in any way, I think the best solution would be to take the can of soda home, but just put it in the fridge and not open it. Yuzu Kosho soda isn't really good. You want to try too, Sakutaru? Uryu? Uryu. Gah! Uryu, you're mean, Maria. Nasty. It sure is, So you're going to throw it away? Of course, it's not like she could actually make a stuffed animal drink soda. She just put the can in Sakutaru's mouth and pretended to tilt it. But it was fun for Maria to share the taste of this weird drink that she had gotten for free with Sakutaru. There was a huge moon in the sky. At times, the moon had been clouded by tears when she'd been unmanageable during Rose's overnight stays. and when she'd been scolded by her mother, but this moon was very warm, and it seemed to watch over the two of them as they enjoyed their trip home by themselves. Maria and Sakutaru, Angie watched the two of them go from behind. Ellipses. She looked so warm from behind. After looking at the backs of Maria One-chan and Sakutaro together, it became very hard to remember all those long nights when she'd cried because her mother hadn't come home. I couldn't say it to Maria One-chan, but if I had been in the same position, I may have given a stuffed animal the name Sakutaro, but it wouldn't have been anything more or less than a stuffed animal. Anyone can make a relationship that only distracts you from your loneliness. But Maria One-chan was different. Sakutaro isn't a stuffed animal or a toy. He was a real friend, and far from just distracting Maria from her loneliness. He changed the nights without her mother into a fun time where they could play all by themselves. Was it because Sakutaro was a special stuffed animal? I know we didn't accomplish very much today, but yeah, it's still a long video. We'll call it there. Later, guys. Bye.